Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today you're gonna see me paint a portrait, but the portrait itself isn't really what I want to talk about in this video, although it is still very much relevant to the topic. Today I want to talk a little about the expectations we have for our art, the love and hate we have for our art, and why the two are so closely intertwined, and why our feelings about the things we create in general are so varied. The topic is partly for my benefit because I was in a low mood and I kind of needed an outlet to let all this out. But maybe, hopefully, it can be something good for you too. So I did this rough painting in my sketchbook some time ago. I wanted to explore a new palette for portraits, and I also really wanted a chance to use buff titanium more because I felt that it was mostly just collecting dust in a box and I wasn't using it to its full potential. And it's such a deceptively simple paint, so easy to push aside for something flashier. So I played around with a bunch of combinations before settling on what you see here. Afterwards, I really liked how the painting turned out, the vibes it gave off, and wanted to continue exploring the palette on other portraits, bigger ones, proper ones, and so I did. And as I painted, I ran into something that happens to me on a frequent basis. And I know there's more than a good chance it's happened to you, because I'm not special. It's a thing that happens to most creatives. And beyond that, just humans in general. Which is this quirk, this phenomena, where it feels like I can only make good art when I have my eyes half closed. And it's like when I'm driving, right? I'm watching the road, I'm paying attention to all the signs, I'm mirror checking, but after a few hours of the same road, the same horizon, the same repeating blades of grass, it all starts to blur into a comfortable haze. And so I sink into it. I have my hand dangling from the window. There's a podcast about highways that never end and small town people wearing two big smiles blasting from the speakers. In a similar vein, as I paint, my mind is drifting. I'm singing along to sad indies, using my brush as a drum, thinking about the last line in a book I just finished, or which bear deserves to be crowned the fattest of the year. I'm floating in a state of pure looseness. Hours pass. I finish the painting and slowly emerge into a mess. My paints that were once glossy and pristine like dollops of hot candy are all muddled together. Red crashes into green. The yellows look like they crawled out of a long sewer, no identity to them anymore. They look haggard. If they had limbs, they would be bowed and sagging and reaching for the nearest alcohol. If they had eyes, they would be shooting daggers at me. There's an odd cloying taste sitting on my tongue, and I realize that the cup of water I have been drinking out of may also have been used to quench the brushes. So it goes. I wash my brushes in the sink this time. I give the palette a quick wipe and whisper sorries to the paints. And for the first time, I take a proper look at the painting. And, well, there it is. It's a thing. It's art. And it looks good. Better yet, it makes me feel good. Good about my skills, sure, that's one part of it. A big part of it, really. A little ego boost. A reminder that, okay, maybe I do have something in me, and I have more to offer to the world than a hermitage out on a sheep farm where I can quietly slip into a long list of creepy myths that permeate the countryside. But here's the kicker. I have no idea how I got there. I have no memory of the steps it took to get from a blank page to this life mashed together of graphite shavings and paints that were packed in a warehouse in another country, mined from some lonely patch of rock halfway around the world that witnessed villages being trampled to dust, laws written to bloody existence, and gunfire and cannons and steel punching through history. It is stunning. It is overwhelming. And it appeared, seemingly, between one blink and the next. Now, compare that to a second painting. This is a painting that I put all of my focus into. I am alert and everything is so clear. With this painting, I'm diligent about making the thumbnail sketches, composition, value, color scheme. I hold them as taut strings in my hand. And with them, I create an imperial map. I have a vision in my head of the painting that came from those preliminary steps, and all I need to do is copy it right down to paper. Okay. Deep breaths. Hours pass. Days go by. A week becomes 2. And at some point within that time, my mind starts sliding down a long slope. And the slope has these large signs staked along the path, and all of them say, you have to make this look good. So I try to make it look good. And again, at the end of it, I clean everything up, and I take a look at the painting. This time, I know exactly how I got here. I had whispered the steps to myself as I enacted them. I curled my fingers around those strings, making them weave and chafe so that they would drag songs out of each other. And because I was so present in every step, I know the exact ways with which to hate it. And that is what ended up happening with these 2 paintings. The first painting in the sketchbook sped by so quickly it felt as though I was dreaming up the session. An out-of-body experience, uncluttered and unfettered. And because it felt like a dream, and dreams are wild and hazy, and a bit of a child thing, with a child's monsters and a child's way of moving, I was free to love it for the imperfection that it was. The second painting wasn't a dream. My time with it didn't move quickly. I felt the beat of every second as a fist lodged in my throat. Granted, I didn't do a whole lot of compositional or value sketches, but I did spend more time with it. Days versus hours. I tried harder. At least, I thought I did. I was tighter with my brushstrokes. I was more conscious of light and darkness, played around with a balance of opacity and transparency. So why isn't it better? No, forget better. Why don't I feel good? What happened to that euphoria from before? God, if I spent all that effort and time and I'm not happy, what's the point? What's the point of any of this? Near the end, I was upset and tired and ripped off the tape before the water was fully dried, and I tore into the bottom edge of the painting, which then had to be glued back down. And that jagged white line is a representation of how this whole process went. Questions that didn't lead to answers, only regrets and doubt, culminating in an act that at the time felt like relief, but turned out to be self-sabotage. I think we all want balance in life, a flat horizontal scale to hold on to. We want to be safe in the knowledge that when we spend $10 at a shop, we would get in exchange something that is equal to that cost. That when we invest a good amount of emotions into a relationship, the recipient will give it right back, smile for smile. And when we spend 50 hours on a piece of art, we will gain 50 hours worth of pride and lessons by the end of it. That we will love ourselves 50 hours more for it. But life doesn't work that way. Life isn't a plain balance sheet notated with X's and Y's and Z's and an equal sign drawn through the middle. There are always invisible variables, unquantifiable, whose sole purpose is to make this world as chaotic as possible. Equivalence in that context is like a unicorn in golden armor that knows the secret to eternal life. So very desirable, and so very impossible to have. The conflict here, at least for me, is between having no expectations and having all the expectations. Freedom versus pressure, looseness versus systemic. And inherently, there's nothing wrong with systemic. Everyone has their own method of creating, and if you're the type of person who needs to plot out every step and sub-step from A to B, from basic composition to placement of the tiniest dots, that's fine. That's beautiful. Sometimes art is like that. Notes and diagrams and neat dissections made with clean blades. And sometimes art is closing your eyes and seeing what happens. There isn't a sliding scale that says one is better and more important than the other. It's just what works for you, what works in line with your artistic vision. And I find that there is great value to both. There's value in plotting things out one by one because it helps declutter all the ideas that are in my brain. Assign them to neat boxes and make them less overwhelming and scary to handle. But it does leave me open to those expectations. Too much thinking gets me into trouble, and I know the same goes for many of you. It gives me more space to second-guess myself. An old teacher in my high school called it changing right answers to wrong answers. And so because of that, there's value in putting myself in a flow state. Stream of consciousness expressed in colors and lines, shaking limbs loose and making quick strokes and off-the-cuff decisions, refusing to give myself time to think about which direction the painting is going, and simply letting it happen. I think my ultimate wish is to find a kind of contentment with both. Not balance, not a unicorn, just the smallest bit of purpose and identity. That I'll be able to make something in an hour and another in a month, and both times I'll sit back in my chair and breathe, thinking, okay, this is why. That when the paint dries, I can find peace in the eventual cracks. The tension between the dream of a painting I cradled in my head and the reality. The person I can't be, and the person I might, with my stained hands and my thorny brain. So how do we find it, this not balance? Ask me tomorrow. I probably won't have answers by then, but who knows. In the meantime, I'm just trying to remind myself that every ounce of effort, regardless of the outcome, is a step forward. Nothing is ever wasted. Nothing ever truly dies, it just feeds into something else. And the end of one is the beginning of the next. The rotting bones of the art I hate is the bedrock of the next art I'm going to love. Is it easy? No. Do I often believe it? No. But it is a reminder that I have to hold on to. An essential tool to navigate this hulking beast we call creativity. Because the alternative is curling up into a ball and allowing ourselves to be ground down by us. And as attractive as that notion sounds, like a quick bandage applied during our lowest moments, ours is a body evolved for standing tall and walking. Beyond that, I think the best thing we can do for ourselves at the end of these long creative sessions, whether it be drawing or painting or writing, where expectations weren't fulfilled, is to sit in it, the emotions, just for a bit. All the anger, the frustration, the sorrow, so much sorrow, dredged up from a place that is older, deeper, and more cavernous than simply, I think I'm bad at art. I think I'm bad at life. I think I'm bad. Full stop. We can acknowledge it, know that it is there and that it is hurting, and then set the painting aside for a time. Bring out a fresh, blank canvas. Turn up the music a little louder and match our voice to its volume. Tune into a gothic horror podcast, a timely one about fears and anxieties manifesting in strange physical ways, and let ourselves be scared, inspired, moved, free. Sink deep into that slick chaos, and, for a few hours, just drive.